Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today our special guest is Amelia Elze. Amelia is the principal of Elze Law, PLLC. Welcome to the show.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Otto.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us today, Amelia. So before we get into all the nuts and bolts of what you do today, I'd like the audience to get to know you a little bit better as a person, as an individual. Are you originally from around this area?
I'm not. I'm a transplant, just like, so many other people around here. I grew up mostly in South Jersey and the very end of Long Island. And I like to joke, I tell people all the time that when I lived in Long Island, I lived in the Hamptons, but I lived in a trailer park in the Hamptons. So I'm really Hamptons trailer trash. Um, that was quite an interesting upbringing and high school experience, right? So then I went to undergrad in upstate New York for a while, lived in Manhattan after undergrad for a while, and then I think I ended up down here in early 2001, I think, and have been generally in this area since then. Yeah.
Great. Amelia, I'm sure, did you really grow up though at a trailer park?
Oh yeah, in a
Okay.
single wide trailer with reverse lights on it that I think my paternal grandparents had literally backed up and put on cinder blocks. It was very classy.
I'm sure though in the Hamptons, there are not many of those types of communities, right?
There's three. There's
Okay.
one in Montauk, one in Amagansett, maybe two in Amagansett, and one in East Hampton. The benefit though is that it was on the beach, right?
Oh,
So
that's great.
it was waterfront trailer. I was waterfront trailer trash anyway.
You should say waterfront property.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could. I could play it,
However you want it, yeah.
Exactly. I just tend to be abundantly honest, unfortunately.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today our special guest is Amelia Elze. Amelia is the principal of Elze Law, PLLC. Welcome to the show.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Otto.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining us today, Amelia. So before we get into all the nuts and bolts of what you do today, I'd like the audience to get to know you a little bit better as a person, as an individual. Are you originally from around this area?
I'm not. I'm a transplant, just like, so many other people around here. I grew up mostly in South Jersey and the very end of Long Island. And I like to joke, I tell people all the time that when I lived in Long Island, I lived in the Hamptons, but I lived in a trailer park in the Hamptons. So I'm really Hamptons trailer trash. That was quite an interesting upbringing and high school experience, right? So then I went to undergrad in upstate New York for a while, lived in Manhattan after undergrad for a while, and then I think I ended up down here in early 2001, I think, and have been generally in this area since then. Yeah.
Great. Amelia, I'm sure, did you really grow up though at a trailer park?
Oh yeah, in a
Okay.
single wide trailer with reverse lights on it that I think my paternal grandparents had literally backed up and put on cinder blocks. It was very classy.
I'm sure though in the Hamptons, there are not many of those types of communities, right?
There's three. There's
Okay.
one in Montauk, one in Amagansett, maybe two in Amagansett, and one in East Hampton. The benefit though is that it was on the beach, right? So
Oh, that's great.
it was waterfront trailer. I was waterfront trailer trash anyway.
You should say waterfront property.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could. I could play it,
However you want it, yeah.
Exactly. I just tend to be abundantly honest, unfortunately.
So out of those three different communities, which one were you in? You mentioned East Hampton had one.
It started out, it's interesting. It actually started out, yeah. I just lost you for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Now I can, sorry.
Okay. No worries. So we were saying, don't worry about this. All this can be edited out too. Yeah. So you were saying East Hampton, you mentioned two other ones. Which one were you in?
In Amagansett.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
in between. Montauk is the last town on Long Island. Amaganssett's the second on the South Fork. Then it goes Amagansett, then East Hampton, then all the various Hamptons hamlets. But yeah, we were like as far out as you can go.
But as you mentioned, you were beachfront, and I'm sure being in that location, you also, how was this public school system?
It was was really fascinating because there is there's a lot of locals in the Hamptons, right? And I think, the people that have the summer houses don't generally send their kids to the East Hampton Public School, right?
That's true.
So the students or children of the people that own those houses often had gotten kicked out of all of their private schools, right? And then the Hamptons, the people who live there year round are or were mostly kind of commercial fishermen, plumbers, electricians, and that kind of stuff. So that was really more the demographic, that I went to school with. But it was still fun. We used to go surfing before class in high school. I'd show up all salty and sandy, and to roll into the first class of the day.
That's nice. So you did everything all through high school in the Hamptons, right?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Well, was that your favorite pastime to do there, is to go surfing, or did you have any other favorite activities you would like to do outside of school?
I mean, well, so this was the early 90s when rollerblading was really popular. So I did a lot of rollerblading.
Okay. All right,
yeah.
Great.
Very exciting.
Did you know back then, Amelia, did you want it to go into law, or when did that interest in law come about?
So I think I always knew I wanted to be an attorney, but mostly I always knew I wanted to work for myself, right? And so in high school, I worked a ton, and I did babysitting and catering, and I worked on a ferry and a fishing boat, and but I had kind of created this little tiny babysitting business, right? Where, everybody would call me, and then I'd line up babysitters, and I used to throw children's birthday parties, organize them, get everything for them, host them, so I've always kind of been working for myself to some extent. And I think I always saw being an attorney as providing that type of flexibility. I can either work for a company, a big firm, myself, a medium firm, a medium company. I just saw that there was a lot of opportunity for me to kind of control my own destiny.
I like that. I like the part too. Even at a young age, you were working out. You were hustling out there, doing all sorts of different jobs, and even basically almost running your own babysitting agency.
I was indeed. I worked very hard in high school and college.
And for college, where did you end up going to for college?
So I went to SUNY Oneonta, which is one of the state schools. It was great. I was a political science and communication arts double major, but I kind of reconfigured a lot of the curriculum. So for instance, I didn't like any of the gym classes that were offered. And so I convinced the head of the athletic department that I could do a horseback riding independent study. And then I did a skiing independent study, right? And I structured it so that I could get credit for doing the things I wanted to do without having to take, volleyball, or I don't know. They were just uninspiring gym classes, quite frankly.
Sure. Okay. Did you know an undergrad as far as law already then, or?
Yeah, I mean, that's where the political science came in. I ironically don't have a passion for political science. I just thought it would be a good baseline for law school.
Okay. And then after undergrad, where did you end up going for law school?
So I have a little bit of a non-traditional kind of route to law school. I worked for a few years first. And so my job with one of the top entertainment law firms in New York City, which was just a riot. And it was my first job, and I kind of thought that's what jobs are supposed to be like. And then I've had several jobs after that where I'm like, no, actually that was an anomaly, right? But it was a law firm that represented all the top entertainers, and you'd have Joan Jett walk in the office, or it was a whole environment that is not to be recreated. And then I moved down here, and I ended up in the legal department for the Peterson companies, and I worked with them. I started as the legal secretary, and then I was the paralegal, and then I eventually went to law school at Widener in Wilmington, Delaware. And stayed working for Peterson for a while, but let me tell you, the commute from Wilmington to Fairfax really sucks. So, and I worked full time throughout all of law school. So I did 2 years in the commercial loan department of Wilmington Trust in Wilmington, and it was a kind of an interesting job because it was in the heyday of commercial lending where banks were just giving away money. And so I'm documenting all these really aggressive loans. And then I had the opportunity there. Nobody was handling the letters of credit. And so I ended up doing all their foreign letters of credit. So I just had a crazy, insane 2 years where like I'd be on a conference call with Israeli bankers at 2:00 in the morning because of the time difference. And I'd have to drag my carcass out of bed to be at work by 8. I'd work 8 to 5. I'd drag my still tired carcass to class, have class from like 6 to 9, and then rinse and repeat. I was young, so I could handle it. I think back on it and I would kill me today, right? I think I would absolutely just die. And then I ended up, Peterson had an opportunity for an attorney position. So I ended up back down here working for the Peterson companies. And then 2008, 2009 came about and kind of screwed everybody, screwed us all up, right?
Yeah, that is a very unconditional route because, I come across people who after undergrad, maybe, become a paralegal sort of where you were at one point, and they just stay there. While you was different. You decided to pursue your law degree and continue thereafter.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Although sometimes I sit down and do the math and wonder, for all the money I spent on law school, if financially I may have been better off, right, just staying the course as a paralegal. But the reality is I like to be able to work for myself, right? And you can't do that if you're in a support role, even if you are the best paralegal out there. So.
That's true. I'm curious, Amelia, you said the first one was entertainment law in New York City, and then you sort of came down here with the Peterson Company and got exposed to the commercial real estate and lending side when you were in Delaware. It sounds like you had more of an interest in commercial real estate compared to other types of law you could have gone into.
Absolutely. It's funny, my favorite classes in law school were property and tax law. I don't know what that says about me. Actually, don't tell me what you think it says about me. I think what I like the most about real estate is I have a passion for real estate in general, right? My hobby is kind of driving around neighborhoods and figuring out what's for sale and rent and how much people want for it. I go for a walk and I'm like, I can tell you how much that house is going to sell for. And it's just a hobby, right? But it's also, and I can absolutely be a complete zealous advocate for my clients. In fact, the sledgehammer that's behind me was a gift from one of my clients for, some aggressive approaches I took on some deals I did for them, right? But at the end of the day, we both want the same thing. In a sale, right? The seller wants to sell and the buyer wants to buy. And it's really about making sure that everybody's protected, but that the deal gets done. And it's the same thing from my perspective with a lease. I actually think that leases are very much like prenups. You're really paving the road for a long-term relationship and just establishing the boundaries for that relationship. And so I liked that aspect of how transactional and property law is, just what it's all about. I don't think you have that same desire for parties to get to the same end result as much, even in other transactional types of law, right? So that's also, I cannot wear a suit every day, and there was no way I was dressing up to go to court. It's just not going to happen. We have a running joke at Elze Law where we dress fairly casually, and I've had one or two clients kind of ask me, why don't you dress like a real lawyer? And I said, well, I can, but it's an extra $100 an hour suit surcharge. You want to pay it? Invariably, the answer is no. I was like, that's not going to give you an improved, work product or brain power. I'm like, but it'll take the sting out of me having to go to the dry cleaners and put this on every day. So
Yeah, that's true. So you went back to Peterson Company, and there now you start as a role as an attorney, right?
yep.
So with them there, Amelia, were you reviewing leases, or were you also involved with the sale and purchase of commercial real estate?
I was primarily involved with all of the leasing stuff, but what was really interesting and invaluable about that position, and the Peters, it's such a good company, and it has so many smart, capable people working there. I really did spend a lot of time with like the property management division and the accountants, kind of helping them interpret the leases. And I realized a long time ago that attorneys can draft the best, most complicated lease that they can draft, right? But if a normal person, I shouldn't say normal, right? If a non-attorney can't read it and understand it, it's useless. It's just not a useful tool then for either party. Because at the end of the day, 90% of the people who are reading and interpreting and utilizing this legal document are non-lawyers. So that whole experience kind of really hit home to me, how to be a practical attorney, right?
Mm-hmm. When you returned back to the Peterson Company, how long were you there for?
So probably only 2, maybe 3 years because of the Great Recession, right?
Okay.
And they eliminated all of their legal department, in my department, except for the general counsel. So I had a few other interesting jobs after that. I was general counsel for a developer based out of Middleburg who owned property up and down the East Coast and a chain of restaurants. So, and that was only about a year. But it was really interesting because I was on both the landlord and the tenant side. He didn't, for the restaurants, he didn't own all of the locations. He was a tenant in some and a landlord in others, but then he owned properties where he was a landlord and there were multiple tenants. And so I really got, in that position, I really got a lot of experience, as the tenant dealing with insurance claims. Somebody had glass in their salad and figuring out how to manage all of that type of stuff, managing all of the deadlines for when do you have to renew, when do your rent increases come up, right? And so there's a lot of practical knowledge that I gained in that position as well, but from the tenant side as opposed to the landlord side, right? So I try very hard, and most of my tenant clients just look at me and shake their heads or poo-poo. But, I actually have set up an entire system at Elze Law that should a client want to take advantage of it, where we can summarize your lease so that you don't miss those dates in the future, right? Those dates are important. You have to get them, memorialized, and you have to keep track of them. And everybody has a different system, but I came up with a pretty efficient one that doesn't require a ton of, complicated software. You don't have to get Timberline or MRI or any of that stuff. But, it's the combination of the practical application of what these legal documents do, but also the sophistication to craft a legal document that, is worth the paper it's written on.
I agree. It just made me think. I just sent out a proposal today, and we were negotiating several items. As you know, one of them is the option, and the landlord wants 12 months, and I'm representing the tenant here, and I'm trying to get it shorter. And we're going to eventually probably land somewhere 6 months, but that is important. Dates are critical when it comes to a lease transaction. How do you set it up? Do you have your own proprietary system, or what do you do there at Elze Law?
So I do not proprietary system. It's really just Excel spreadsheets. It's not complicated because for the most part, if you have a small tenant who they're opening their first restaurant or their first nail salon, they're not going to buy any software, right? So it's really a matter of keeping it as simple as possible. I am working with a group who has created this fabulous abstracting software that uses artificial intelligence to kind of pull in information directly from the leases, and they save everything on on a cloud so that you can access the leases while you're reading the abstracts. And I think it's amazing. For my purposes, I needed to do a few other things. So we're kind of in the process. And I feel like that will ultimately end up being an amazing, an even more amazing, because it currently is awesome, right? Product that could also be beneficial, right? And so I really like playing around with how you provide quality legal services, but from a business standpoint. My clients are running businesses, I'm running businesses. It's not that I need to be in my ivory tower and they're in theirs. It should all work seamlessly together.
I agree. So when you were working with this developer who had properties and restaurants all around the East Coast, after that, is that when you sort of went off on your own and went through that venture, or?
So I joined a small leasing firm in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Wonderful attorneys, super fun environment. But at the end of the day, I still wanted to work for myself. And I live in Northern Virginia. And let me just tell you, 3 years of driving from Northern Virginia to Gaithersburg, I have PTSD for 66. I'd work long hours and I'd be getting home at like 11:30 at night, and 66 would be under construction, and I would be at a dead stop a mile from my exit, and I would just cry. I would just sit in my car and cry because I had been at work for 12 hours and I just wanted to go home, right?
Yes.
And that was just, after 3 years of that, I think that was one of the, I wanted to work for myself and I wanted to not have to drive to Gaithersburg every day. So that's when I started Elze Law. And that was about 8 years ago, maybe 9 at this point. I'm starting to get old enough that those dates are blending, right? I have to start counting backwards anyway.
Yeah, they start blurring.
Yeah.
So, working with a law firm or even just going off on your own is totally different thing, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
Besides the commute, was there anything else as far as an unknown, as far as getting that client base, or I'm sure you already had it established prior to sort of jumping ship and open up and hanging your own shingle, right?
I did. I had a reasonable amount of my own clients, right, that were completely unrelated to the firm that I had been working for. And I just, I did the math and realized that if I kept my overhead really low, I didn't actually have to, bill as much. And that it would give me time to kind of grow. But it was scary. I didn't have any savings. And so I didn't pay my bills for 4 months. So I was cash flow. That was, my credit, if you go back that many years, my credit looks terrible. So it wasn't completely without risk, but I had confidence that at the end of the day, I could make it work. And it was worth me the desire for me to be able to work for myself. It was worth it for me to take that risk. Even if I had completely shit the bed on it, right? I still think it was the right decision. I especially think it's the right decision, that I've been successful, but anyway.
Now I'm curious, looking back at it, knowing what you went through, during that scenario, during that time of that period of your life, what would you have done differently, maybe to prepare or do something differently as far as when you made that decision to go off on your own?
That's a really good question, and one that I've actually never considered. I think the timing was appropriate. I wish that I had been in a position where I had been able to save a little bit more money before I took that leap, so that I started out with a cushion rather than just jumping off the cliff. And I don't think that I could have or should have done it much earlier, because I think at that point I was only like 5 years out of law school. And it takes that amount of people to, have deals go wrong, to really understand how to be a lawyer, right? So I think if I had done it any earlier, I was too junior to have the level of sophistication that I needed to kind of be my own attorney. So.
Sure. Going back at it, obviously for each individual is different depending on their monthly expenses, but what would you say would be a figure I should have had X amount of dollars saved in order for me to not sort of mess up my credit back then 8, 9, 10 years ago?
right? So I think that is situation specific, but I would say at least 3, if not 6 months of your basic living expenses.
Okay.
The kind of savings cushion that, responsible people have just in general.
Sure.
But just to make sure, because make sure that you have a couple months where you can pay your mortgage and pay all your bills, because even if you initially start with clients and a business, and this I think goes for any business, it just takes time for the cash flow to catch up. You have to wait a month before you bill people, and then it takes 30 to 45 to 60 days for them to pay, just in the normal course. And so, having enough of a float to be able to pay your bills while you're waiting for all that to come in really, I think, is important. I also think that in different types of businesses, you have to understand that things are not going to go smoothly. So you should budget double whatever it is you think it should cost, right? It's a lot easier. It was a lot easier for me because I think it was myself and my paralegal at the time. I didn't have an office space or office rent that I had to pay. My billing software wasn't expensive. I had a computer. I didn't have to go invest a ton of money into infrastructure or programs or manpower. I didn't have to hire employees really right away. But when you have businesses where you need to do all those things, you have to be able to, and if you're going to have to start out and you're going to have 5 employees, for instance, to be operational from day one, guess what? At least 2 of them aren't going to work out and you're going to have to replace them, right? There's just unexpected expenses like that, I tell all my small business clients, whatever you think it's going to cost, multiply that times 2 at least.
Yeah. I like how you bootstrapped it too in the beginning. And I think that's the nice thing about some service businesses, what you do or even what I do, is that we can start off with a low cost basis. Yeah. And you don't have that tremendous expense or upfront capital up front.
Exactly. And that was critical, right? That was really important, and it has allowed me to grow organically, without having to borrow a ton of money or get investors or any of that. I've been able to do it, as the firm has become more and more successful.
Sure. Now, with commercial real estate transaction, you and I both know that it's not as fast moving as the residential side of the world, where I've spoken to some people who work in residential, and from a broker agent perspective, they get paid at settlement. And yep. When I'm working with some who's used to residential, when it comes to leasing transactions, not at all.
No. Well, I get paid monthly. Precisely because of that, right? I have deals, I have acquisitions that I'm going on 2 years now. I can't pay the rent and the internet bill and all that. And, that's me giving the client a loan for 2 years. So, the work because it moves more slowly than residential, we bill monthly.
So they're retainers, the retainer fees that your clients then do.
I actually very rarely charge a retainer fee. I do not want to do business with people who aren't going to pay me, and I can figure out very quickly, right, who those people may or may not be. Mm-hmm. And so, I carefully curate who my clients are, and I almost never charge a retainer. It's just a monthly bill for work that I've already done.
Okay. Now that we're talking about that, can you explain a little bit to the audience? I'm sure they understand now at this point of the episode that your focus is solely on commercial real estate, but maybe you can go into more detail as far as what you and Elze Law do.
So we do, I think I like to say we do all things commercial real estate, with some exceptions. And so I represent buyers and sellers of the property. If you're a buyer of property, that comes with loans, title, due diligence, right? Reviewing, existing leases if you're buying a shopping center, management agreements. I do an odd amount of service agreements. A shopping center owner wants to install security cameras, for instance, or they are hiring a security company, or they're hiring a property management company, or they want to do, there's all these electronic signs now that you can put on buildings, or you want to do electric car charging stations, or you want solar panels on the roof of your building. So there's a lot of stuff that's not buying and selling the property or doing a lease, but that is related to that core part of my business. I don't do any pure zoning work. I think that's a very location specific specialty. I don't do any kind of liquor license type work, and I don't do any employment, but we put together joint ventures, we put together private placements, we put together companies for our tenant clients, so it's commercial real estate plus, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Are most of your clients the landlords or the tenants?
So I would say the majority of my clients are landlords. And I think that my sweet spot and where I really shine are actually larger projects where you're doing the leases from the beginning, because I have a whole system of how you can get them all done. You can get it done quickly and efficiently and keep track of all the restrictions. And it's kind of a project that I can really own and sink my teeth into. But I have a very respectable number of tenant clients, and some big, some small, some it's their first lease, some it's their seventh lease. What I think is really gratifying, though, and interesting is that my clients, the majority of them have been with me for years, right? Some of them knew me when I was the legal secretary at Peterson, right? So 20 years. And, once I typically manage to kind of stay in the life cycle of my real estate tenants, tenant clients and landlord clients. I do a lot of CAM disputes, interpreting leases 3 years later. How do I exercise my gross sales kick out? How, I don't think my landlord's charging me the right amount of money. Can I audit? So a lot of that type of stuff as well.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, I know you mentioned that some of your clients is actually the Peterson companies where you were employed in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So you do all the leasing for them? I'm sorry, not the leasing, the law side of it?
No, I mean, not even close. We still work together, and some of the individuals who were at Peters have created their own companies, right? So it's like, what is it, 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or something?
Yes.
I swear that a lot of it, we all just work together so well that we all like to continue to work together.
That's great. Amelia, if you can share whatever you feel comfortable with. So I'm trying to think about focus from the landlord perspective and also from the tenant perspective. Let's say if you are a landlord, a commercial real estate landlord, and they want to hire you, your firm, for everything, whether it's, you mentioned all these agreements that you have to do with security, all it may be, and also to review the leases before they go out to the tenants. Something like that, as far as would it be per item? Would it be on a monthly fee, or how would that work?
And that's a fantastic question. I have explored all types of rate structures for both tenant and landlord clients. And the one common theme that continues to come up is that there is no way to create kind of like a monthly fee or a fixed fee that doesn't ultimately either screw me or screw the client, right? And if I'm going to come up with a fixed fee, I'm going to come up with something that's a little bit on the higher side just to give myself some padding. And so we bill hourly, but we also are very efficient. And I think that because I did not start my career in a law firm, and because I have structured Elze Law as more of a business than your stereotypical law firm, I think ultimately you get a lot of value for what you're paying. It's just a 1,500 square foot lease on the landlord side take me 4 hours because the tenant doesn't negotiate it, right? I can have the same size, same use, have an attorney or a tenant on the other side who's crazy, and then it takes me 25 hours. And I can't control, there are just certain things like that that neither I nor the client can control unless you're just going to capitulate, and that's not happening, right? So, it's really, instead of focusing on fixed fees or retainers, we have focused on how do you best provide quality legal services efficiently, right? We don't spend a lot of time that doesn't need to be spent. And I will often, get something done in an hour or two and tell the client, well, we could do these things, but here's why you don't really need them. If you want me to spend your money for you, no problem, but I have no problems also not spending your money for you. I think one of the challenges that I have is when you have unsophisticated parties, at the end of the day, a lease is anywhere from 25 to 150 pages. And sometimes it just takes time to read the lease. And so I tell clients, well, if you were going to read every word of this from cover to cover, how long would it take you? That's how long it takes me to do my first draft. I'm reading with comprehension, right? And I'm not glossing over, but I'm able to kind of speed read through certain provisions because I've read them a million times before, but some stuff just takes time, right? I can't read 150 pages faster, right?
Yes.
So that's, and that's what we're perpetually striving, again, quality, right? And that's where sometimes it takes time to produce quality work. But I like to think that we do it in such a way that if it does take more time than you think, there's the confidence that we needed to take that time. Because if we don't need to take it, we're not going to take it.
When I work with tenants and this may be their first go around, or maybe they have a few locations that they've done it a few times, and I tell them the value of an attorney, specifically a commercial real estate attorney that focuses on this, because sometimes they're like, yeah, I have an attorney. And then I come to find out it's just some general attorney, maybe they do family law or who knows what, and they're reviewing the lease. And I'm like, okay, I don't, what do you have to say for that?
One thing I'd like to clarify, when we talk about unsophisticated clients, oftentimes they're incredibly sophisticated in what they do, right?
Sure, of course.
Not sophisticated in commercial leasing, right?
Yes.
And I think that's an important distinction because most of my clients are wicked smart in what they do. But leasing is a specialty the same way that I'm not going to take on, a divorce, for instance. Now, I'm a smart girl. I can read the statutes and the case law, and I can kind of figure things out. But if I haven't been a divorce attorney for 10 years, then you just learn things in doing a particular type of law that you can't learn in a book. You can't figure out from the face of a document. And often it's not even what's in the document, it's what's not in the document. And so I tell every tenant that kind of calls to interview me, you absolutely do not. Here's lots of reasons why you should hire me, but if you don't, my feelings are not going to be hurt. My strongest counsel to you is make sure whomever you hire specializes in leasing. We just know things, right? Like, I've run into a bunch of instances where landlords just don't keep good accounting records. Well, you don't know that from the four corners of the lease unless you've been doing it for 20 years and have seen it go bad a few times, right? And so there's language that we add to help protect the tenant if the landlord's accounting is not so great. And it's not a dig against, these other attorneys are probably fantastic in what it is that they do. They just don't do hundreds of leases a year like we do. That's all. So, I like to say, whomever you hire, make sure that they are specialized in commercial leasing.
I agree 100%. Many times I'm working, not many times, I've seen it time and time and again when I'm working with clients on the tenant side. And first of all, number one, they don't even have an attorney. And if they do, it might not be the right attorney. And I think that's imperative because whatever the investment is with getting the right commercial real estate attorney that focuses on leasing, it's well worth it just for whatever section or language they will put or take out of the lease.
Yep. Well, here's actually a really good kind of anecdote. I'm currently negotiating a lease on the landlord side. The tenant's attorney is a commercial litigator, and he is a smart guy. But guess what? He has spent so much of his clients' money commenting on provisions that we're never going to give him. It's not market. It's not appropriate. I know why he's asking for it, but the answer is just no. And somebody who does commercial leasing wouldn't even bother asking because they know. So I'm on like the fourth draft of the same type of these comments. This is where the lease is now more expensive for my client, but the tenant is paying way more for a product that's not even what really, it's not as good as it could be. They're just kind of like wasting their money arguing about stuff that was never negotiable in the first place. And again, opposing counsel is a really capable, smart attorney. He's just capable and smart in a different area of law.
That's crazy. Speaking about, commercial leases and everything, now that, COVID is here, what have you seen as far as on the landlord side, as far as any new language that landlords are comfortable adding into the lease that, may help protect the tenant?
Mm-hmm. So, I'm going to say much to all the tenants' chagrin, pretty much nothing. It's kind of business as usual. Even being on both sides of the table, I get it, right? The landlords are selling a product. Their lenders aren't giving them a break if, for these COVID type delays. At the most, my landlord clients are providing time for the tenants to kind of recover, but it falls into the category of I think bad things happen to good people, and that there's no fairness or equity here. But it's if a landlord is going to give a tenant the type of protections that they want given what's happened with COVID, there's no backstop for the landlord, right? It's like giving away product for free. And who's going to produce product? You're not, J. Crew is not making sweaters to then give them away, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I really think is what I have seen is not that the tenants are able to kind of stop paying rent entirely, but that there's a little bit more flexibility for when they have to pay that rent. But so far across the board, that's been limited. I also think it depends on the financial wherewithal or the strength of the tenant. Are they going to be a value to the landlord's property? All the same types of leverage items that we've seen for decades past.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and my tenant clients are always very disappointed when, I advise them of this, but I think that's the business landscape. And quite frankly, I don't think it's inappropriate.
That's true. What are some suggestions or advice from the tenant side if they're reviewing a lease, maybe some items they can look out for?
Oh yeah. When does your rent start? What does the landlord have to do before your rent starts, right? Those are have you looked at the space? How old is the HVAC? Do you need gas to run your business? Is there gas available to the space, right? A key concept, I think, the vast majority of my smaller tenant clients don't understand is that if it is not expressly set forth as the landlord's obligation to deliver with X, Y, and Z done, it's as is, right? So, I had a client who decided not to use me for their lease and then came back to me 6 months later because the landlord delivered as is. But guess what? The way the slope of the building worked, they couldn't tie into whatever sewer lines they needed to tie into without spending like $180,000. Or you don't understand, you're a restaurant tenant on the first floor of a big office building, and you don't understand how you have to vent your restaurant and that you have to go through 8 floors, and that's $250,000, right? So just those basic pieces. And then do you have time to get permits? I had a tenant against my advice, and they went to get permits, and there's no parking at this center, and the Fairfax County is like, you need to have 20 parking spaces. Well, what do you do, right? You've now signed a lease that you're obligated, rent's not tied to you getting permits, and you're obligated to open, but you can't get permits because there's no parking. Well, so just a basic amount of due diligence. Is the property zoned for your use? Right? These are not even things that are in a lease. It's stuff that's not in the lease, that, people don't necessarily think about. And that's, I think, where those are the unexpected expenses or pitfalls that really will just screw a brand new tenant. If you're opening and you get an extra $100,000 bill, you might not be able to open, right? And it can all be anticipated by doing an appropriate amount of due diligence. The other provisions, I would say, think about what your long-term business plan is and build in flexibility accordingly. So do you want to open 5 locations and sell them? Well, then make sure that you have the right to sell them without having to ask the landlord for permission or paying the landlord a chunk of the price that you're getting for that business. I see that provision in a ton of leases. And that's the thing, that's the type of provision that even a sophisticated landlord will often delete, right? They may grumble or argue about it, but at the end of the day, you can usually get them to agree that no, if you sell your business for $500,000, I'm not going to take 10% of it. But I've seen smaller tenants who didn't negotiate that, who, as a condition to selling their Chinese restaurant, had to stroke the landlord a check for $50,000. And as a business owner, I'll be damned if I'm giving my landlord any money related to the goodwill of the business that I built. That doesn't belong to you, right? Anyway, I feel a little strongly about that position. Hopefully my landlord clients aren't listening to me right now. But flexibility to assign the lease if you need to, and flexibility with what you can use the premises for. Now, those kinds of things are always a give and take, and it depends on who your landlord is. It depends on what the shopping center or property that you're going into looks like. There's no black and white kind of rule of thumb, but it's the kind of things that a tenant should be thinking about, I think.
No, those are all some great tips and great examples. Thank you for sharing them.
I get a little excited sometimes. Sorry.
No, it just reminded me of this lease I just recently did. It's mine to compare to some of these possible expenses of 6 figures or higher. I was doing a retail deal with a client, and as you know, most retail deals are as is. Yeah. Everything would be in good working condition. The landlord provides, of course, but then you have no idea the age or the tonnage and size of your HVAC unit that's sitting on the roof.
And if it's a year shy of its useful life and it still works, that's good working order.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. So I told my client, I was like, look, let's get a commercial HVAC company out there to take a look and find out what's the tonnage, the age and everything. And yes, this is an expense typically that's going to cost you, I don't know, maybe a couple $100, who knows, as far as who you hire for your HVAC company. But then we find out that the age, I forgot the number. It was old. It was over 10, 15 years old. I don't remember exact right now. Mm-hmm. And the landlord they were about to take over the space the way it is. So in the end, we negotiate. I mean, it's all working right now, but if any repair replacements, it's now 100% landlord responsibility, which before everything was tenant responsibility. Mm-hmm. And just some people, they're just so short-sighted. Same thing again with hiring a commercial real estate attorney that focuses on leasing, whatever that investment and cost is, similar to that HVAC commercial company. It's well worth it. It's well worth it.
I mean, I like to think so, right? Otherwise I'd be out of a job, but
yes.
And there are, trust me, I can negotiate the most sophisticated tenant-friendly lease you'll ever see. And if I have a tenant client that hires me to do that, all day long. But, I think the majority of my smaller tenant clients, they don't need the Taj Mahal of leases. They just need one that protects them for the things that are going to cost them money, right? And that's typically our approach. I think, and there's a lot of things that can cost them money that they're not necessarily thinking about and aren't in the lease. Another one I actually make them sit down and read the provision. If they're getting an allowance, the hoops they have to jump through for the allowance and timing deadlines, and then making your general contractor and your contractors liable if they don't give you those things, right? So if you have an allowance provision in a lease that says that you have to get a lien waiver from the GC and every single sub, but your construction contract doesn't obligate them to do it, well, good luck with that, right? I mean, you can probably get it done, but that's just a hole that doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, I agree. What would you say, Amelia, that drives and motivates you now?
I really love running a business, right? I really enjoy the relationships that I have with my clients. I am very fortunate to have the clients that I have, and I like talking to them every day, right? And I just like, they're just the problem solving, it's how can I get this lease done for you the way you need it done? How can I get this project? If I do a lot of research projects for my landlord clients, and I try to approach them with the big picture and in mind. And so, our work product is something that they can then use for the next 10 years. They don't have to come back and pay a law firm another 10 grand to read all 50 leases again, because we try to answer as many questions as we could all at once, right? And wrote it down in a nice summary. I can't tell you how many times people just say, hey, go read the leases and tell us if we can do this, but they don't, and then they 4 months later need to do something else, and they're like, hey, go read, it drives me bananas, right? So, it's that kind of problem solving. I think it's the business operation, the relationships that I have with my clients, and being creative about how we produce our legal work product.
That's great. What would you say you're most proud of thus far in your business career?
That's a really good question. I think that we've worked on some really fabulous projects as kind of the small law firm. We did all the leases for One Loudon out in Ashburn when it was probably just myself and my paralegal, right? And they all hold up in court. It's just that we really have been able to produce very sophisticated legal work with, we don't have an army of people here, but my clients don't want to pay for an army of people. And we all are smart enough and capable enough that we can get that work done, more efficiently, I think, than some of the firms that have, an army of people, right? Sure. And then I've worked on, I've done a baseball stadium lease. I've done a number of, $1 million, multi-million-dollar deals. Like I'm proud of the fact that we're able to get sophisticated projects and do them well.
You were just mentioning that the projects you're working on in your team, and even just that original project you're working on with just you and a paralegal. So obviously having the right team and the team members is very important. How does that look for you and Elze Law?
So I think we have a rock star team. It wasn't always the case. I will tell you, if I'm being honest, that they do not teach you how to hire and manage people in law school. And actually, in fact, every skill that I learned in being a good attorney is completely opposite of the skills that you need for those types of things. So it took me, there were some years, right, where I didn't hire the right person. I didn't manage them very well. I was actually, if I'm being honest, a terrible manager. I think I've much improved in that category. But I think that we really do have a stellar team of great attorneys who, we all are at least 15 to 20 years into our career. Two of my attorneys used to be general counsels at other companies, right? And so they have, again, not just the legal experience, but the practical business experience, right? Mm-hmm. And they know how to, for lack of a better way to do it, get shit done. And so, and we work very well together as a team. And we each have, I think, a specific strength that the other doesn't have. And so it has taken a long time to get to this point, but I'm actually really proud of where we are and the team that we have now.
That's awesome. Is your team remotely, or now with COVID, how are you guys working?
Great question. So I have always been a proponent of remote work. I think that if you are an independent professional in your field and you're not being trained by somebody, I don't care where you are. So I set Elze Law up from the very beginning to make it easy to work remotely. And so I have attorneys all over, I have one in New Jersey and I have one in West Virginia, and they can come to the office if they want to, but they don't have to. I've hired paralegals in Georgia and paralegals in Colorado. You can, the great thing about legal work is that if you're billing by the hour, I don't care if you're farting around for 4 hours out of the day because you still have to bill,
Sure.
right? So it's very easy to measure productivity. But then we have a core group of us, including myself, that are in the office, and that collaboration is actually, I think, really nice. I don't think we would all work quite as well as a team if we were all remote, right? I do think that there's a value to be had to have some of us in the office or all of us in the office occasionally. But, I just went to Colorado for a month and a half and worked from there, right?
That's great.
One bit, but,
Yeah,
have that ability and that flexibility. So
that's great. I love that.
mhm.
What would you say, Amelia, are some habits or skills that have helped you on a day-to-day basis, whether for yourself personally or for your business?
Huh. Interesting. I think sheer determination, honestly, you just have to keep going. I have in recent years come to really appreciate and understand the necessity and made it a habit of taking time for yourself. And so for a very long time, I just worked like a machine and realized that it's not sustainable. And so I'm always telling people around, go for a walk at lunch. Do you want to go for a walk? Let's go for a walk. We're slammed, but you know what? That 30 minutes is not going to make or break anything that we're doing. And it is going to make us all so much happier, right? And so I think that has become possibly one of the most important habits, and one that I'm trying to encourage everybody else to develop as well. At the end of the day, the work is going to be there. There are very few real deadlines, and we're usually far enough, out ahead of them that we're not scrambling in the last hour, but take that time for yourself.
I agree. That 15, 30-minute walk, I actually started myself implementing that because, we would pick up the kids from school now with COVID, and we would walk but when you come back, you just feel so refreshed, and you took that little 30-minute, 15-minute walk break.
Yeah.
Yes, it makes a huge difference.
I have discovered that it really does, right? And then anyway, and because we all work really hard. So, if you work 12 hours a day, 30 minutes is not going to make or break anything.
Yeah, I completely agree. What would you say is your biggest challenge right now with your role at Elze Law?
I think we need to grow our team, right? And so finding the right people that fit in with the mentality about how we operate and scalability. And it's interesting because I talk about scalability with my clients all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a dog walker client, and everybody loves her, and she's great, and her business is gangbusters. But we talk about scalability because I'm like, Gina, people hire you because you're awesome. You bring on other people, they're not going to be like you, right? And it's the same thing it's the exact same concept in my line of work. And so I think the biggest challenge has been finding the people who are just as good as the team we have now, with the same type of work ethic and approach to, doing legal work, has been the biggest challenge.
So right now you are in growth stage as far as adding more people into the team?
We are.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the middle of COVID, who would have thought, right?
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would you, knowing what you know now, Amelia, would you have done anything differently from the start of your law career?
From the start of my law career, I don't think, I think that some of my inadvertent decisions actually provided a perspective and an experience that I wouldn't have gotten if I had a more traditional path, and that makes me the attorney that I am today, and that in that I'm able to handle such an interesting variety of things and or cut to the chase on so many things. I do wish I had had a little bit more mentoring and experience with things like hiring and managing people, right? I really learned some of that stuff the hard way. And, if I had had, I think, more of a mentor to guide me, maybe I wouldn't have made all those mistakes, but who knows? Maybe I would have, right? Maybe I'm just destined to learn things the hard way. And so, so I do try, although I don't often have the opportunity to mentor other people. I just because I had to learn it the hard way doesn't mean everybody else does.
Yeah. Has there been anything that's helped you on the management side of the business that you used?
Oddly enough, my clients' input, because they're more sophisticated at running businesses than I am. And I have had more than one sit me down and gently say, so Amelia, if you handled it this way, you might have a better outcome, right? And so, kind of watching how they manage their businesses and then just legit quality feedback from them has been invaluable. So.
That's great. Same thing and that's why, commercial real estate, I'm only dealing with either landlord or business owners, entrepreneurs, and just talking with them and the way they run their business, whether it's management, whether it be the logistics side of things or the marketing, the advertising, the sales part, you're just always learning. And I just find, and that was part of me having this reason of doing the show is just always learning and how maybe that little nugget can help you in your business.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's a law firm, but it's a business, right? I am still running a business. It's just a business that provides legal services. And I happen to be a pretty awesome attorney.
Yes. Coming to an end here soon, what does the future look? What is the next 5 year? What's the vision for Elze Law?
I think we just continue, quite frankly, to grow at the pace that we're growing. I would like to add a few more people to the team, but I don't ever want us to be large, right? I want us all to be at a point where we have a manageable amount of work and that, we're able to jump in and support each other if one person gets busier or, has a life event that they need backup for, but that that we have created an environment where everybody has a reasonable quality of life and, just keep it slowly but surely moving ahead and, expanding.
Sure. When you're not busy working, Amelia, what do you like to do in your free time for fun?
No, I think I'm always busy working. No. And that actually is a true statement up until like the last year or two. I love to hike. I love to bike ride. I love to travel. I love to eat, which really has sucked in COVID because I view going out to restaurants as a hobby. Yeah, I like to be outside. I like to be in different locations. So I'm slowly but surely trying to build or get some of that stuff back into my, normal day-to-day routine.
That's great. I'm sure being in Colorado for that month and a half or so was a very good time.
Oh, it was amazing. I love Colorado. Everybody is doing outdoor stuff. You can walk everywhere. That is the one thing I really miss. I live in the Northern Virginia suburbs and you can't really walk anywhere, but I can walk to the coffee shop. I can walk to the grocery store. I can walk to my friend's house. That walkability was really enjoyable. And then you're half an hour out of Denver and you're like, at Red Rocks or all these beautiful places. And it's just inspiring. It's kind of like it fuels the soul, I think.
Yeah. Now that we're coming out of COVID, Amelia, do you have any place you would like to go visit, whether internationally, whether it's traveling or even you mentioned restaurant?
Mm-hmm. So we're going to go to Key West. We go to Key West every year, except last year when it was basically closed. And then I really would like to go to some, tropical island somewhere, right? St. Lucia, Barbados, something. And just kind of, and be in a different culture, a different climate, just to get out of the United States.
I agree.
We'll see.
Where can people find you? If they want to find out more about you and Elze Law, where can they go and find out more information?
So my website says it all. It's elzelaw.net. ELZELAW.net. Funny story about the .net, by the way, is that I had started the law offices of Amelia Elze in 2009 as a stopgap measure, and I bought the domain elzelaw.com, and then I lost the registration. So when I started Elze Law PLLC, I went to go buy elzelaw.com, and it was taken. It was taken by me, and I couldn't prove it. So there you go. Yep.
So this .com website is just there?
Yeah, I can't figure out how to get it back, basically. Nobody else can use it, so at least with that. But yeah, I just but you know what, that just makes it one more thing that makes us special.
Oh, that's awesome. Amelia, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, same. It was a true pleasure. Take care.
All right, have a good one. Thank you.
Thanks. You too. Bye.